Before I start, I wanted to first check how many of you have ever presented to a venture capitalist or a private equity person? Okay, so that's about 10 to 15% of the room. Is Sandeep Singhal still here? Okay, that's competition. I wanted to make sure he's not in the room before I do all the tricks and whatever that we use. I like the last line which you presented, Rohan, on if you keep building it well, they will come. And I think that was something which is most valuable that I would take away from that presentation, in spite of the fact knowing that one of those responses on the no response, too late, too early, was from our firm. So no hard feelings. There's always another time. So coming back to fundraising, it's given the diversity in the audience, it's not an easy conversation because many of you would have experience of different levels here. And so I wanted to make sure that while I take you to the basics, keep it more anecdotal, keep it more examples, so that there's something in these examples for everyone to learn. Even if you're a very experienced entrepreneur, even if you have a reasonable sized business, there's often something to take away from these examples. And before I dive in, let me pull out my cheat sheet. These are overhead slides. Yeah, this is the first one. A pitch is very simple. It has 7 components, 6 on the left-hand side, 1 on the right-hand side. Now, depending on the type of the industry, depending on stage of company, some of these may vary, or the importance you give to some of these may vary. But these are, in essence, the important elements of what go into a pitch. And what I'll do is go through each of those with some examples. And it will be helpful for me if you pause and ask questions, because then I'll get a sense that you're getting it, not getting it, interested, not interested. So let's dive into it. And the first one is product or service, and we call it purpose. And the important thing here is really, what are you trying to do? What is the problem you're trying to solve, or why do you exist? And that's the most important question that you have to answer up front, saying, what is this? And I took the example of of Sequoia Capital. We also pitch. We pitch to our LPs, people who give us money, and we pitch to founders. Oftentimes there's a competitive situation where 5 funds want to invest in one company, and there are many such situations where we are chasing the entrepreneur to make sure that we're able to invest in the company. And here's what we tell them. We could tell them that we are investors, we put capital in your company. We could tell them that we add value to your company by providing you ABC services, etc. But to say that we are really focused on helping the daring build legendary companies. So if you are a founder who's trying to build a legendary company, that's the one that we want to be with and going to help you along the way. How do we help you is the next level of the pitch, and that's the detail that we come to, saying what are the resources we have, what are the connections we have beyond capital, because capital is a commodity. And that's how we see it. And for most of the high quality founders, capital becomes a commodity. So it really boils down to saying, how do I select the firm that I'm working with? And Rohan referred to some of that, saying, how did he choose his partners? People who understood the business, people who had experience in the business around different parts of the world. And that's really important to understand. So for everyone to pitch, saying, why do you exist? What's special about you? What value do you bring? The reason of your existence, product or service, is the most important thing. Spend a lot of time thinking about it, in articulating your pitch. Many people refer to this as a 30-second elevator pitch and so on and so forth, but a very quick, smart, sharp articulation of who you are, what your purpose in life is the most important thing, and this is where the pitch begins. In my opinion, this is probably the most important thing. There is a big debate amongst investors on whether market is more important or the team is more important. And there's no right answer. We've had enough people debate this on both sides. Where we've come to a reasonable peace settlement, if you will, is saying that in a very early stage of a business, if you're a really venture company or a seed stage company, it's the team which is more important. And at a later stage of the company, when numbers have evolved, the company is going in a certain direction, the economics are well established or getting established, the market is more important. And I'll tell you why the team is more important upfront when the business is less established or still at the very early stages, is because a high quality team has the ability to pivot. If the market is not looking very good, they will find a way to go towards the right market. But at a later stage, it may get too late. And that's something which Warren Buffett always speaks about, saying it's the market, it's the market, it's the market. And we've all heard that. He's a late stage investor. For early stage investors, very early stage investors team, mid stage investors, it's a little mixed up because you need to look at both. Late stage is much clearer. In fact, we also have a saying which goes like, when a good founder meets a bad market, the market wins. When a bad founder meets a good market, still the market wins. But when it's a good founder meets a good market, magic happens. And that's what most of us are always looking towards, trying to find a good market with a good founder, but it's not easy. So we keep looking, and then you're making compromises on different sides, saying, hey, the market is not perfect, but it's a great founder, or it's a great market, but an okay founder. So you keep finding those combinations that work for you. Now, defining the market is really important. It's articulation of what the market size is. It can be defined very narrowly, or you can expand the horizons and start thinking of yourself as a big market. When you spoke, Rohan, you spoke about the FMCG brands versus saying I'm selling Greek yogurts. I mean, when you started off, the vision was saying I want to build a branded FMCG company with innovative products. Now you're defining your market broadly. When Uber started off, they could have said, hey, we are doing a taxi sharing company. What's the market? Who knows? No one had an idea of what that market is. But the very simple articulation that Travis had was saying that the total stock of cars in the world is $1 trillion. The average utilization of these cars is an hour per day. I am trying to increase the utilization of these cars from 1 hour a day to 2 hours a day. Imagine the impact that my company can create if I can do that. And when you hear that, saying, oh my God, this is massive. And that's something which turns heads, makes you focus, makes you listen and pay attention to. I remember when we were evaluating Ola in India in 2014 beginning, it was a very small company. And most of the debate in our investment committee was how many taxis are there in India, both the black and yellow varieties as well as the rental white ones. We took the total number of taxis and said, what market share can Ola get from this? You put 10, 20, 30% market share, all of that you do, you can't justify a very large company. It's really hard because that market of existing stock of taxis was not very large in India. And therefore you almost come up to an answer saying, hey, this company cannot be very big. But if you flip around the question and said, what's the latent market here? How many people would stop using their cars and start using a taxi if a convenient service like this was possible, was available? And that market is enormous. So it's the difference between articulating a market one, which how we were thinking about Ola, versus how Bhavish articulated his market, changes the dynamics. You start getting interested in the business. So pay a lot of attention to this, saying what is your real market? How can you get someone excited about the potential of the market by getting them to focus on the real market? The latent market here is really important. I remember an example of Vinny Cosmetics when we were looking at them in 2013. It's easy to say the deodorant market is $300 to $400 million. So you can't create a large company here because eventually what market share will you get? The market leader at that point, Axe, had 13% market share. Imagine you can get to 13% market share. It's not a large company, not fun. But if you change the articulation to saying that I'm a personal care company and that market is an $8 billion market, then the percentage of market that you need to get to become a large company, it's similar to this example. Your market suddenly becomes much larger. When Ankur Jain of Bira was pitching to us, you could have thought of Bira as a craft beer, zero market. The market was zero. So there's no market that you can think of. If you thought of it as a premium beer, because the starting point of that beer was 250 rupees, that market was maybe $200 to $300 million. But if you thought of it as a beer company, the market becomes $6 billion. If If you think of it as an alcoholic beverage company, the market size becomes much larger. So think of what are you targeting and how are you pitching this as the most important part of your pitch. The next one is who's your customer and what need gap are you solving? Articulating that well and saying that what is so special about your product or service that's meeting the unmet need of the consumer. If you think about a couple of examples that have worked well in India, Byju's, the way he articulated saying what's the need gap, the quality of education around India in the smaller towns, in spite of schools being existing, they are unable to attract good teachers. So if I can provide good quality teachers to them through the internet or through any other electronic medium, I'm solving a massive problem for the consumer. This is an unmet need and I'm trying to solve that. That works. Then the next problem comes as to how you're going to reach those consumers and so on and so forth, which is harder because till that time Byju was booking stadiums and calling people into the stadium and pitching to 8,000 or 10,000 parents at one time, of which 1,000 would buy, and that's how the business was growing. But you could do only one such meetings every month because it takes a lot of time and effort to organize such meetings. But we'll come back to that later. Car Dekho is an example. They said the consumer problem that we are trying to solve is today when a consumer is looking to buy a car, he doesn't know where to go. He can go to a car dealership, but car dealerships are exclusive dealerships. So if I go to a Toyota guy, he'll tell me what's the best thing about Toyota. When I go to a Honda guy, he'll tell me what's best about Honda, and so on. There's no one source where I can go and find out all the literature about comparing cars, what's good, what's better. And through the internet, I can provide something like this. It's an amazing service. And today, 80% of people, before deciding to buy a car, are going on the internet and looking for information on cars. So you're really solving a particular consumer problem. Now, they've been doing this well so far. In the meantime, if they could have thought of their market as saying, I'm helping people buy new cars, I'm also helping sell people old cars. You could expand it saying, I'm the owner of the car transaction market. But they did not do that. In the meantime, there's another company that comes which says, I'm Cars24, comes on IPL, puts ads saying, hey, we are experts of selling cars. What's the problem we are trying to address? When you decide to sell your car, you don't know what to do. You go to a dealer, then go to the second dealer and the third dealer, get 5 such quotes, and then decide which is the best quote, and you're not still sure that that's the best price you got for your car. Or you go and list it on OLX, and then 5 dealers call you on the phone, posing as consumers. You answer their questions, listen to their quotes and decide. But if there was a way, I can go to a dealership, which is a Cars24 dealership, and at that point he runs an auction across 50 dealers in Bombay and tells them, here's a car inspected by us, and what's the price? 50 dealers quote at one time, and I give you the best quote. Now you're saying, hey, that's I feel much better that 50 people quoted on my car and I got the best quote instead of running around to 5 dealers and getting 5 quotes or 2 dealers depending on the time I have. So I feel a lot better that my car has been taken care of or I got a better deal. So trying to, this also is an example of defining your market bigger, as Car Dekho did not. They're now doing it. And Cars24/7 coming in and saying, hey, there's a part of the problem you did not solve, I will solve it. Really talking about who your competition is and being clear about it. This is not necessarily a part of the pitch, but this is something you should be totally aware of because this is a question which will come. Who are you competing against? What problems? Who else is trying to solve the same problem? And at what stage of evolution are they? Are you the market leader in solving the problem? Are you number 2, number 3, number 5? Or are you a new concept that no one has done yet and you're the first one trying it, and so on. But this is important to understand. Now, this is a dense slide, so don't try to read into this. This is an example from a slide of a company which is trying to deliver fresh meat to homes of people. And they're saying there are 10 other companies doing this, but we are really superior because we really thought about all the elements. I have a bigger diversified product basket, I'm reaching consumers at a lower cost, and so on and so forth. So on different aspects of the business, you are comparing yourself with every competition and saying why I'm better. This is, again, repeating myself, this is not a part of the main deck. This is something that you keep as backup and say, I really know about this, because any investor listening to your pitch wants to know that you're on top of your industry, top of your competition. And I've really thought through the last line, which is, what is your unfair advantage over competition? What are you doing that they're not able to do? Now, even in competition, sometimes there is a way to define the market. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the Netflix example of saying, who am I competing with? I'm not competing with other streaming videos and so on. I'm actually competing with books. I'm competing with sleeping time and so on. So I'm actually trying to expand my market size. If people sleep less, they watch more Netflix. If they read less books, they watch more Netflix and so on. Similarly, we were investors in, or are investors in a co-working space called Office, and they do not define their competition as other co-working spaces, because that space overall is new. There are 20 such companies who have co-working spaces. There's a big boy called WeWork, but there are many other companies. But the way they define their competition is saying, we are actually fighting with traditional office space. It does not make sense for most SMEs to be working out of their own offices or renting their own offices in any type of property. They should be working in a co-office space, because it makes a whole lot more sense. And therefore, we are competing with the traditional office space. This is, again, coming back to whether the market is important or team is important, irrespective of what you believe, this is really, really important. And it's not, there are two parts of it. One is saying the team is so capable that it's the selling point. And there are some cases like that. For example, when Darshan Patel of Winnie Cosmetics came to pitch Winnie, it was a small company, but we knew that he had already been the creator of a company called Paras Pharma, sold the company for 3,500 crores, restarted the company. So you know this individual or this team has the capability to do this, right? So there's no, it's an easy pitch. You emphasize the team, and that's all it takes to sell the story. I remember a similar story of, I wasn't involved, but this is a story of the YouTube team. When they came in and they said, hey, we were working at PayPal, we sold the company, we sold our stake, or got done with our roles, and we are now starting YouTube. And you knew what each member of the team did, because we were investors in PayPal and we were investors in YouTube. It's easy to know who they are. The same case for us as Paras and Winnie Cosmetics. So those are the easy ones. The more difficult ones, and this is where again, highlighting what is special about your team, or leaving examples of what you have done in the past, just talking about it. The resilience sometimes often tells you that this is a good team to back. Sometimes it's IIT, Harvard, etc., that people look for, which is great to have. But more importantly, what investors are looking for is, how are you coming at it together as a team? Are you working well as a team? Do you understand each other well? Are you complementing each other? And are you showing the perseverance? Are you showing the determination to work it out? There's a 2009 story of Airbnb. When they launched the company, the two founders, and this is a story I've heard from Brian Chesky, one of the co-founders, they were unable to get funding, because the idea was saying, we'll make people stay in the homes of others. And even in the US, the whole concept of saying, I'll let my house out for a week or 2 months to somebody else was completely alien. So no investor believed their story. But they kept pitching. They kept improving the story. And they had a few people who had started using their service. But it wasn't by any stretch of imagination something that people believe will work. In the way eventually the funding happened is an investor asked him, so how are you guys keeping the company running? Because you've been trying this fundraising for a year, nothing has happened. You guys are not making any money from the business. You are young guys, you don't have any historical wealth. How are you keeping the company going? The answer was that what we do is we figured out a small trading business on the side where we buy some cookies from some cheap source and we sell at this more expensive place. And every day we're making a few hundred dollars by doing this, and that's what we're going on constantly putting in the business. So that's what we're doing. This investor said, you guys are cockroaches, you're not going to die. Here's $650,000 to buy 20% of your company, and that was the starting point. So that is just showing the determination, saying you really believe in this concept. You forced people to believe in your concept. It wasn't about the team. I think another important aspect is the go-to-market strategy. And here, a very detailed understanding of what channels are you using, what are the costs of going to each channel, which is the preferred channel, which is the secondary channel, and so on. A clear articulation of that is really important. A company which has done this really well in India articulated that, investors understood that, invested in that, and are looking good is a company called Freshworks. They sell different types of SaaS products to the US market. And the main question in India for SaaS businesses has been that you have to hire a sales team in the US to sell your product. And the proposition of the Indian companies is my product is cheaper than the competing US product. So I'm selling at a 30-40% discount, but if I have to hire a sales team to sell the same product, the sales team wants the same remuneration. So the economics don't look as good. They said our go-to-market strategy is not hiring a team in the US, but actually accessing or acquiring consumers online or enterprises online and using a telecalling team to close the deals. And I may have 5 or 10 people running around the US market to finally help solve a little bit of problem and show that we also exist around here, but I have a much lower cost of acquisition than my competition in the US has. That go-to-market strategy really makes a difference. Now, this is an extreme example, and this company has really scaled from $0 to $100 million of revenues because of this super GTM strategy. But knowing what your strategy is, which channels work better, and for example, we had a company which is selling color cosmetics who came and pitched to us, and the question was, you are using EBOs, multi-brand or retail or the supermarkets, you're using SISs, you're using e-commerce. You understand the economics of each of these channels and which is the best channel for you. And their understanding of each of these channels saying, we are doing EBOs to lose money, we will continue to lose money. In the hypermarkets, supermarkets, we'll break even, but we'll really make money in the shop-in-shops in general trade, and we'll make money in e-commerce. And the understanding and articulation of that is what convinces you saying, hey, they understand their business. And it's about being able to show that with clear numbers is what helped them win the confidence of the investors. And finally, numbers, but it's not just about numbers because most young companies are depending on the industry you are in, need to focus on different aspects of numbers. And this is where it's important to really know what is your business, what metrics really matter. If you're a grown-up company, clearly it finally boils down to saying what your EBITDA numbers and what your profit numbers are, but very few people look for funding then. The stage at which you're looking for money, you're usually loss-making or break-even at best. And therefore focusing on, here's something that we are watching, and here's the movement over time on this particular metric, and this is how it will trend in the future. Demonstrating that first, knowing what it is and demonstrating that I'm focusing on this and tracking this. Everyone kept saying my gross margin was 38% and now I'm at 48% or 40% and 48%. In his business, that's the metric to watch. It's really, really important to keep saying, am I tracking this well? The other metric to watch is what are my logistics costs? And how are they trending downwards? But it's not that it's another hidden line. You have to upfront come and say, hey, here are the 3 things that I'm watching in my business. This is trending up, this is trending down, and therefore this business will converge over time, and this is why it makes a lot of sense. Now, there's other stuff. It also needs to look good. It's not about making the presentation. It's not just for the heck of it. It shows that you care about it, you spend time thinking about it, and the same data can be put like this or like that, and that looks better than this. And it shows that you care more and you spend a little more time. That's not the most important aspect, but it does make a difference. I mean, there's a recent pitch which came in for a company where there was so much graphics and animation that there was a truck coming from the left and then somebody dropped something off and went off and so on. So he said, hey, I don't know this business, but I want to meet these people. Because it's somebody's put so much effort into it, they are passionate about it, so it's worth meeting them and finding out more about their business. Moving into some of the softer aspects of the pitch. So all investors, and especially the early stage investors, get ton of inbounds. I would be not exaggerating if I said that we get more than 10 inbounds a day. And therefore it's really hard to decide where to spend time on, what to focus on. And of those, you quickly read what you get and you say, hey, these are the two that I want to spend more time with. And you may have made a mistake because there were some others who are more interesting businesses but did not spend the time, energy in articulating that, or making a nicer presentation, or writing something about in the cover about why this is an exciting opportunity. And therefore, just doing something which catches the attention span of investors, which is small, which is really short. So this is before the pitch. And even after, when you come into the pitch, while you have been given an hour, most people, their attention span starts declining after some time. So you start looking at saying, hey, is there an impression being made? And I'm not saying that's the right thing that investors do, but this is what they do. So it's just useful to know that after some time the energy level starts dropping down. So you have to catch it early on. Make sure that the impact is there, because if it is high impact, then the attention span is elongated. So you can pull that longer and make sure that you end it well, because that is again the final impression that you're leaving with the person. Don't need to explain this. Now, what I wanted to do was quickly run you through few examples of what impressed us in a few companies. So if you look at Bida, the company was really not making any sales when we invested in them. It was very early, and we seldom make very early investments. But in this case, there were two aspects. One, understanding of distribution, which is on the right hand side, of saying how can I distribute this beer in a market where access to distribution is really hard. And on the left side, a detailed focus on saying how will I build my brand and what is different about this brand. The passion for the details of the brand and understanding the nuances of the distribution business were important in just saying, hey, looks like there's something real here, it's worth a shot. In our language, it's worth a shot. And you say, here's a few $1 million to go and try this out. Oyo rooms, the idea is I will take a few properties and I can improve the quality of those properties and then sell them online and so on and so forth. But the real question is, it takes a lot of time to improve, to acquire a property, because you go negotiate, you spend a lot of time thinking of the terms, thinking about who gets what of the deal, and then you take the property over, then you have to put air conditioners, you have to put clean beds, make sure the basic infrastructure is in place. It looks like a business with lots of friction. And therefore, in our world, we say it's very easy. If the lower the friction, it's easier to invest. If you're moving bits, is better than moving atoms, if you know what I mean. So if it's something moving through a network, it's easier than moving physical pieces. In this case, it looks really hard because you're moving air conditioners, going and fitting them, applying them, etc., etc. But when Ritesh pitched, he said, look at the first one. It takes me 3 meetings to convert a lead and 3 to 14 days to convert this. And based on this, I've already acquired so many hotels. And I said, this looks impossible. I mean, this is too quick. How do you convert everything in 14 days? You could do it for one. Maybe if you put all your energy in life in doing one, because all of us have done houses or offices, and we know that everything takes 3 months at least. Or they say it takes 3 months, takes 6 months. So if you're really doing this, and you check out the 10 properties that you're actually able to do this in such quick time, then there's something special about this company. You figured something out that others haven't. So there's a system, there is a method to executing this really well, better than anybody else has done or thought of, and therefore your ability to scale will be higher. When Dipinder was pitching Zomato in 2012-13, there were two things that stood out about his pitch. One was, on the left side, the web traffic that was coming without making any payments. So in most cases, when you look at web traffic, it's acquired traffic. But in the case of Zomato, most of it was just coming by itself, by word of mouth. People are telling each other there's a great app or great website where you can get reviews of restaurants and so on, and they were coming by themselves. They were not spending anything. So there wasn't a Zomato ad or paid acquisition, or very little of it until 2013-14. Later on things changed. But this just stood out, this data. And you said, I haven't seen any other company which is getting 70% plus of their customers organic and it's on a large base. And if you look at the right-hand side, this is a young company, very small revenues, but the team profile there kept saying, IIT Delhi, Bain and Company, IIT Delhi, Bain and Company, I'm Ahmedabad. For a young company to have 10, 15 people of high caliber itself is a win. Again, we do get swayed a little bit by IIT and whatnot, as I said, but having so many of them at the same place meant that there was something special about this founder who was able to attract talent of this quality. And as I mentioned office earlier, what caught our attention in the pitch was two things. Again, the pitch about what's my proposition for the tenants, what's my proposition for the landlords, both of them very clearly articulated, and most importantly, if any SME who's less than 30 or 40 people in size moves to my premises, they're going to save costs. It was hard to believe because it says, hey, you charge a lot of rent. You're charging, let's say, 10,000 rupees per seat per month. That sounds like a lot. But if you do the detailed maths and say, hey, this is really true, then the market becomes really, really large. And that's what Amit was able to do in making this pitch. This is a very fancy meat company presentation that I spoke about, where the truck was moving and dropping something. We aren't investors here, but this is something I saw a few days back, and therefore I put this in the slide as I was making it. Very compelling numbers, very nicely articulated, taken all the metrics and said everything is looking good. It's hard to ignore. So it's important to take investors towards the metrics that matter, and if you can highlight how those metrics are really making a difference in the business, it means a lot to investors, given especially the short attention time. So this is not about getting the money, this is about first getting the attention. Because I'm not saying they have got the money, it's about getting the attention. They've got the attention. They'll come and present on Monday, and then we listen in and say, hey, does this make more sense? But the first impression is really good. That's all I had. Thank you.